Welcome to The Explainer. You ever stop and think about why you can choose between a dozen different smartphones, but you probably only have one option for your water company? Well, today we're prying open the government's antitrust toolkit. These are the rules that quietly shape the entire world of business around us. So let's kick things off with a huge question. If two massive companies want to merge and become an even bigger giant, who actually gets to decide if that's okay? And how do they even make that call? Well, the answer is something called antitrust policy. You can think of it as the official rulebook for keeping the game of business fair. Its whole purpose is to stop any single company from getting too powerful and to make sure there's healthy competition out there. And here in the US, you've got two main referees on the field, the Department of Justice, or DOJ, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. They're the ones watching the game, ready to blow the whistle on any plays that look unfair. Okay, so what do these referees actually do when they're making a big call? Let's open up their toolkit and take a look at the very first thing they grab when two of those corporate giants want to team up. The first major tool in the kit is all about crystal ball gazing. Seriously. They have to analyze these massive corporate mergers before they even happen to try and predict what the fallout will be for the rest of the market. To do that, the first thing they have to do is get a snapshot of the industry as it is right now. They measure something called market concentration, which, is really just a fancy way of asking, are we looking at an ocean full of little fish or a tank with just a couple of giant sharks? So how do you measure that? For a long time, they used a simple tool called the four-firm concentration ratio. It was okay, but kind of clunky. Today, the go-to method is the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, or HHI. It's way more powerful because it gives extra weight to the biggest players, so you get a much clearer picture of who's really running the show. And calculating the HHI sounds complicated, but it's really not. Let's say you have a market with just two companies, and they each have 50% of the market. You'd take 50 squared, that's 2,500, plus 50 squared again. Add them up, you get an HHI of 5,000. That's a super concentrated market. But what if you have 10 firms, each with 10%? Well, the HHI would only be 1,000. So regulators use this to see just how much a merger would shake things up. A big jump in that HHI score, that's a huge red flag. All right, on to the next tool. This one isn't about stopping mergers before they happen. It's about policing the companies that are already dominant. So what happens when one of those big sharks starts playing dirty? Well, regulators have a whole list of illegal moves they're constantly on the lookout for. You've got stuff like price fixing. That's when competitors secretly agree to jack up prices together. Or there's predatory pricing, where a huge company will slash its prices to drive a smaller competitor out of business, only to raise them right back up once they're gone. But it's not always so obvious. There are also these things called restrictive practices. These are much sneakier moves, like tying sales, where a company forces you to buy product B just to get the product A you actually want. A classic example, a printer company that makes it so you can only use their super expensive ink. It's a pretty clever way to corner a market without, obviously breaking the law. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. What if a monopoly isn't the bad guy? What if in some very specific cases, having just one company is actually the best, most efficient way to do things? How does a toolkit handle that? This special situation is called a natural monopoly. Just think about your local water company. It would be completely nuts to have 3 different companies digging up the streets to lay their own separate water pipes to your house, right? In cases like that, having one single provider just makes sense. So if you can't have competition, you have to have regulation. The question is, how do you regulate them? Well, there are too many ways. The old way is cost-plus regulation, where the company just charges you for its costs plus a guaranteed profit. The problem? They have zero reason to be efficient. The newer, smarter way is price cap regulation. Here, the regulator sets a maximum price, and if the company can figure out how to lower its costs, it gets to keep the difference. Now that is a powerful incentive to innovate. Now, everything we've talked about so far assumes that we need these tools, that government regulation is a good thing. But for a while, a radical new idea started to take hold. What if the best thing the government could do with its toolkit was to just put it away? And that brings us to what's known as the Great Deregulation Experiment. Kicking off in the late 70s, the US government started stepping back. It removed or reduced a ton of controls on major industries like airlines, banking, and telecoms. The whole idea was to just get out of the way and let the free market do its thing. So, of course, that leads to the million-dollar question that people are still arguing about today. Did it work? What actually happened to prices, to innovation, and to everyday people when the government took its hands off the wheel?
And the answer is, well, it's really complicated. On the one hand, proponents will point out that deregulation gave us things like cheaper plane tickets and all sorts of new phone services. But on the other hand, critics argue it also paved the way for things like the 2008 financial crisis and led to a few powerful companies dominating certain industries. The debate is far from over.
And that all leads us right here to today and the single biggest antitrust question of our generation. These tools we've been talking about, they were designed for railroads and oil barons. So how in the world are they supposed to apply to today's tech giants, companies that exist online, across borders? How do you even define the market power of a company whose main product is free? That's the challenge regulators are grappling with right now, and the answer will define the economy for decades to come.